All right. Hey, what's up, guys? We have Phil Braun here from the Office Hours podcast. What's going on, Phil? How you doing today?
Pretty good, Micah. How are you doing? Thanks for having me here.
I'm good, no problem. So, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? Since I don't know how many people, I mean, I know probably have a pretty good audience size, but if anybody hasn't seen Office Hours or whatever else you do.
Yeah, it's a pretty massive following I've got here. But so it'd be surprising if people don't know who I am at this point. But no, I am
How many times have you done Joe Rogan now?
like 75 times. But this was like before Spotify, so you probably haven't
This
seen me
is
on any of the post Spotify deal he had,
yeah.
unfortunately. But no, so everybody kind of knows me on social media and the internet as Phil Braun. And probably a lot of people who listen to you have listened to me on Office Hours and appeared there. But prior to any knowledge of that, I pretty much have just been your average Joe on the street and just, came out of nowhere, I guess. So um, that's about all I can tell you there.
Yeah. So when I first started listening to Office Hours a while ago now, a couple years ago now, like you would come on, and at first I didn't know that you were doing a bit. And then eventually I figured it out. And then even when I asked you to come on, I didn't really know that the whole Phil Braun character was a bit. I thought it was you just kind of like goofing around. So I guess just like how did you get in to that? How did you come up with that bit? And then also like
Right.
what's your goal? Like are you trying to do kind of like a I'm forgetting the other guy's name who also goes in Office Hours. He's friends with Tim Heidecker, and he looks
So
kind of like an old man.
there's an old man on
Like an
there.
old man look. He sings, he does comedy. You know him. He's like the most popular.
Oh, you're
Um,
throwing me off there now.
I'm forgetting his name, and I actually forgot it.
All right, so
I
there's
was
Tim. Let's just list everybody here. So we got Tim Heidecker, we've got Doug Lucenhop, we've got Vic Berger, got producer Matt Carlin, and then are you talking about somebody outside the purview
yeah.
of Office Hours?
He went on that that Christmas episode, and he like sang a song. He was on with John C. Riley. You know who I'm talking about. He's like kind of famous.
But you're not talking about John C. Riley. You're talking about somebody
No,
different.
the other guy. He had like a movie about him. The
Oh my
director.
gosh,
I can't believe I yeah. Anyways, we
I'm
can
drawing
move
a
on from
complete
that.
blank. Yes, let's edit
Yeah,
this part out. Uh,
yeah.
um, anyway, yeah. All right. So rephrase your question because I've kind of
Yeah,
lost my
sorry
train
about
of
that.
thought now. Trying to think about who that is. Like,
So, are you trying to make like turn Phil like what's your goal with this? Like are you trying
okay,
to
yeah.
be a comedian, or is it just something you do for fun on Twitter, or like are you trying to make, money off of it, or
Yeah. So I guess to turn this into a kind of a boring story, but so probably 15 plus years ago, kind of like when blogs were popular. Like there was no Twitter. It was just kind of like there's MySpace, and then people would post blogs and stuff like that. So me and a group of buddies that we always would go on these trips together every year and just goof off. And then when we were together, we'd always do stupid stuff. And we kind of grew up like making uh, videos in the summer when we were like teenagers. We did that just all the time, just making Rambo movies, making movies about whatever Steven Spielberg did or anything like that, and just goof on that all summer long. And so we've been friends forever. We still act stupidly like that, and so there was a point where I came up with some characters for like each of us, where I was going to kind of start learning how to Photoshop, and I was going to make a blog and all this, and my buddies were like, nobody's ever going to watch this, and or nobody's ever going to read this, and um, so I did it kind of as a dare, and then I created, Phil Braun myself. Didn't look kind of like I just look normal now, but I created all these characters and created these stories. So I'd write these stories out, and the Phil Braun character back then is kind of similar to what you know now, which is he's kind of a overinflated ego of himself. He's kind of a liar. He claims things that aren't really true, and he always ends up in a disaster, or he creates disasters, or he's, always screwing up somehow. Um, so I just sort of created that little universe. But then when that sort of died, I just sort of transitioned it over to Twitter. Of course, nobody followed me then, but it was just still just kind of a general jackass and comment guy, reply guy, or whatever. And and from there, I guess that's kind of when On Cinema started taking off, and I just really latched onto that. I mean, I just loved that humor. I've always been a fan of Tim and Eric, and but On Cinema was just kind of like a whole different level to me of just comedy and what that was about and the world that they built. And so like everybody else, I was just kind of into that, and they were very much an online presence and very interactive. So you could, I mean, you could talk to these guys, interact, and joke with them, and uh, and be in that world. And that's kind of where Vic Berger sort of surfaced, and that's where he was sort of discovered, was just through that. And and then it was from there. Tim, out of Tim's boredom, I think he created office hours, where he just would be sitting in his office and turn his phone on and just start taking calls, and people, whatever you want to ask him, come in and ask him. And I'm like, hell, if you can have a chance to go talk to, somebody you feel like is like a comedy hero, then why not just call him up and ask him random shit? So that's really all I would do. And it just sort of grew from there. And he liked me, I guess, because I was somewhat prepared. When I called, I didn't have nothing to say. I always have like something to say. It was never a bit. I never did bits, or I never did any like jokes or anything. It was just all just kind of straight down the line, try to get him to talk or whatever. And but then certain things would happen from there, where I started getting a little more confident and kind of throwing in some of my own humor in there, and just seeing if I could make them laugh. If I could make him laugh, or I could make Doug laugh, then that was sort of like a nice goal to have whenever I'd call in for myself. But I always enjoyed doing that, and it just sort of evolved from there, I guess. Sort of long story, but
Yeah, so it mainly evolved through office hours then. Like, do you do anything like outside of office hours, or is it mainly just office hours besides Twitter? Like, do you do any stand up or anything
no,
else?
I've never done stand up. I've never done anything. I really had never done anything beyond just the scope of social media. So really nothing beyond the scope of Twitter for the most part. In fact, the only the Christmas show from I guess it was 2.5 or a little over 2 years now in LA. That was my very first in-person live performance ever doing that. Other than grandparents' eulogies and things like that. I've never done any kind of like public performance or speaking in that kind of forum there. So that's it's all new. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember seeing you at that. It was like at somebody. It was like Doug's house or something, right? Where there was like 20
Well,
people, and like Fred Armisen was there, and like Dunst,
yeah.
right? Like,
Well,
right? Is that
that
what you're talking
right.
about?
Yeah. Well, that no, I'm talking about. Well, that was the first time I had actually met those guys in person. So that was office hours March 2020, which was kind of when the shit hit the fan, COVID wise. And that was it's kind of a funny story there, I guess, which is so I kind of invited myself to that, more or less, which is when they decided they were going to do like a 9 to 5 show. They're going to go from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So an 8 hour show. If you
That was
watched it,
nuts.
it
That
was
was just
nuts.
crazy. Like how long it was. I remember listening to it,
Right.
being like, "Oh my god!" I feel like I'm like
Right.
having
So
like a
and so if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever seen my Gettython stuff before, but
I've heard about it. I was going
you've
to ask
heard
you
it.
about that too, but yeah.
We can come back to that, but
Yeah.
Gettython is usually a 6 or 7 hour show we do. So I'm used to like long, uh, grinded out kind of shows like that. So, but I just sort of made it in passing when I heard that they were doing this long show. And by that point, I sort of ingratiated myself to them where they were like, I knew they liked me, sort of like a little fan favorite, I guess, whenever I'd call in. And I just sort of, kind of as a joke, but kind of serious, just said, "Hey, if you guys doing an 8 hour show, you're going to need filler time. So let me come out there. I'll fly out there. I'll be like your gopher. I'll sit on the couch. I'll bring you guys coffee. I'll just do whatever you guys want. Be kind of funny just to see me kind of show up." Um, and Tim responds, he's like, "Yeah, something to that effect." Like, "Yes, absolutely." And I took that as the green light to go. I think Tim was like making a joke response, thinking there's no way this guy's coming out here, but I was planning on going, and Vic was always sort of in my corner and always saying, "I mean, you got to come out here. You got to come out here and be on the show." So I told Vic, I said, "Hey, they said I could go to the 9 to 5 show, so I'm planning on going." He's like, "Oh, that's awesome." And then so I flew out, and I got to so Vic told me, he's like, "Okay, we're going to be doing it at Doug's house. Here's the address. We're gonna show up the night before the show to kind of set up. Why don't you come by and just hang out with us?" And I'm like, "Sure, sounds good." And I got there, and that was the first time I met Matt. So this was the first time Matt Carlin had joined as their producer, and Matt's a longtime friend of Tim's. Um, so we kind of walked in together, and I could hear from the other side of the door, from Doug's door, I could hear Tim say something to the effect of like, "He's really here," like referring to me, like he couldn't believe. So you open the door up, and he got this look where he's just like, "Holy shit, the guy really showed up."
And
So
that was on the
this was
camera,
the
right?
no, this was the Thursday night before the show was going
Oh,
to
okay,
happen. The
okay.
show was going to happen Friday, so this was just Thursday night. They're getting all the wiring set up for the show,
Yeah.
just hanging out. So, and I just kind of show up. So that was kind of a humorous moment there. But I kind of felt like it was. I actually thought it was kind of important in terms of when you ask like where I want to go with this. I really don't know where I want to go with this or if it will ever go somewhere. But I felt like if anything is going to be propelled as a character or anything else, it was important to kind of meet those guys in person because it's always better. It's one thing for you and I to kind of talk wherever you're from, and I'm here in Atlanta, and we're just talking through a computer versus just being face to face with somebody and they just kind of know who you are. And it's a relationship thing, and I'm kind of in a business in the real world where I'm in the sales business, and person to person is always better in terms of on the phone, for example. So in addition to being fun, I think it was important for me to meet those guys so they kind of know, I'm okay. Uh,
You're not like a serial killer or
I'm not a
something.
serial killer. I am a normal guy. I'm not just the guy you just see on the other end of the phone or the other end of the camera.
You're an
And
AI robot.
yeah, and I think that it made a difference. So and
Yeah.
our relationship kind of built from there anyway. So and then after that, that's kind of when I started like kicking in more the bit thing and started just trying more stuff and rolling the dice in that regard.
Because yeah, it's one of those things where you can't really, and I don't know how, like some of the stuff on there, I don't know, I think it's intentional, but I don't know really what is real, what's fake for the most part I do. But like sometimes I kind of get the vibe that he seems annoyed with you, but I feel like that's part of the shtick, right? Like obviously
Yeah.
Yeah, and
in part, there is some real annoyance in sometimes. Not so much with me anymore, but I think in the old days, I think that would surface, and I think it does surface with Zoomers. If they, I think Tim gets bored sometimes, and when he tunes out, he's done. And so I've definitely been on the show before where I could pick up from him that he's tuned me out and he's kind of done with it. And however he responds to it, he responds to it. But I mean, he's always generous and gracious, but at the same time, that is sort of his personality too, where uh, you can kind of see it. I can, like, you've seen it, and I can kind of see it too. Um, but generally speaking, that is just part of our interaction now, where Phil is kind of a bonehead anyway, so it's naturally he's going to be annoyed by whatever it is Phil's doing on the show because he's screwing something up or whatever. So that is kind of
yeah,
the shtick now.
it works. And
Yeah,
yeah, he seems to kind of get like, he'll get like randomly kind of like mad or irritated, but I mean, I think it's normally a shtick, but sometimes you're like, is this some of this kind of real? Not with you, but just in general, he'll
yeah.
like be like, let's move on with the show or whatever. And he seems like,
For the most part, but it's just part of him performing a little bit. But there is a
yeah,
little bit of realism to that too, from what I know about him as well. That does come to the surface every once in a while.
like he can, yeah, he can kind of get mad, like realistically mad sometimes. Yeah.
If he
But I
wants
mean,
to, or at least irritated, I'll
yeah,
say.
yeah. And so the guy that I was thinking of, by the way, is the other guy in On Cinema. Like it's Tim Heidecker and
Oh, Greg.
exactly. I always
Yeah.
forget his Greg Turkington, right?
Neil
Yeah,
Hamburger. Yes.
yeah.
We
So
should always, yeah.
he's another guy that's like obviously just doing a shtick, and it's like, which is really funny. I mean, it's like top tier level, like both of them, and you
Yeah.
too, is like top tier level, like performance art or whatever you want to call that. Like, um,
Well, Greg is the king of performance and
yeah,
performance art in terms of, and I know, like lately though, I've kind of noticed he's broken character and done a couple of interviews here and there, but I think I've never asked him this, but I think he hates doing it. I think he hates uh, pulling that curtain back on his respective Neil Hamburger and Greg, the On Cinema guy, and keeping that kind of a mystery as to kind of who he is, which he's always been an expert at that. And um, I'm always inspired by both of those guys, so I definitely pick up inspiration and the things that I do. I'm informed a lot by them and what they do too. So
yeah. So you do live in Atlanta, right?
yes,
Atlanta, Georgia, and
yeah,
you are just like a behind the scenes. You're a normal, like, father,
yeah,
normal family man, have a
yeah,
normal job, like sales job.
yeah, yeah, and just do this when I can. Although it's created some other opportunities. So I've definitely, and COVID kind of allowed me to explore that more, just because that year 2020 nobody's doing anything anyway. So work kind of sucks, and so I might as well kind of expand my horizons a little bit and try to see where this goes, as you've said, and what's going to happen. But it's I've it's led to some writing opportunities for those guys, and I'm doing some stuff now for the upcoming Oscar special that's around the corner here. So and yeah, it's been pretty fun.
Yeah, it seems like Tim Heidecker is really kind of like, it seems like he's getting bigger and bigger at this point, right? Like he backed that one HBO show with Andrew Callahan, or his
Right?
company did, right? And then he has
Yeah.
Office Hours, and he has On Cinema, then he has his music, which his music is probably his last two records, mainly his last record, was probably one of my favorite records of
Yeah.
the last couple of years. So I mean, he's really doing a lot of stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's probably a busy guy.
there's yeah, and this music, I mean, there's no joke, they're really good. But
Yeah.
and I don't know his I don't know his production part. I don't know how much his involvement is. I just know it's his company, but yeah, I think my impression is, I could be wrong, but that there's a lot of work that his production company does that we probably don't even know about, and commercial work that they do that we don't even know about. And but Tim, what I know of Tim is he's one of these guys. He's always got something that he's thinking about doing or wants to do or is in the process of doing. So he's just, which is the reason why these people are successful, is they're always kind of going and going and going. So they don't
Yeah.
sit still for very long. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The funny thing with me is I have become that type with like videography, photography, like with my podcast. But
Uh,
unfortunately, I'm not making too much money off of it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's
that
hard to like be somebody who's like, basically it's hard to like break that level to where you're actually like making money off of what you're doing that you love or enjoy, you know?
right, and that's where I'm at too, which is I'm on podcasts more. I'm doing office hours things. I'm not just them, but outside sphere sort of stuff where I might write for somebody, do something, but the money is just like so small that it's tough to get where you could actually make a living doing it. So that's kind of what you'll find out is it's very difficult to break through, to become successful where you don't have to do the 9 to 5 stuff and do the fun stuff.
Yeah. It's like one of those things where like nope, it almost seems like nobody really knows the answer of what exactly to do. It's like, well, I want to do
Right.
the podcast thing. I want to be a video, cinematographer or whatever. But what do I do? Like I keep working towards it, but it seems like with people like Tim Heidecker or like on up, I don't know if it's like a big break you have to get or like a certain amount of luck or people just naturally
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
but
I,
like
I
with your humor real quick, I personally find your type of humor really funny. It's probably my favorite type of humor. Like some of the the
just
the
weird and
jokes
morose. Is that
weird,
that's what
well,
you?
weird and morose. But I remember a while ago you came up with like a Game of Thrones thing where you said like you had found like the
Yeah.
final episodes of the Game of Thrones, and you said it was all about like weddings
Right.
or whatever. And I just
Yeah.
thought that was like so funny because it's like they're always doing these like big weddings.
Yeah, that was yeah, that for some reason I kind of got to thinking about all those cheesy finales that you'll always see on like network television and sitcoms and things like that, where it's always to bring ratings in somebody who's going to get married or whatever. And for whatever reason I was thinking about that show, and it just so I don't know if you saw, did you see so I made a video of it, and then I did it on office hours as two separate things. And the office hours thing was just really sort of by accident, in terms of how that came up. So, and that's one of the things that I think really kind of propelled or made me have a little leap forward in terms of my stature with them, which is to say, so I did this little, 7, 8 minute video where I just am like, I found the final script to Game of Thrones, and I kind of went through all this, nonsense about what I thought was in the show.
Yeah.
And I thought it was funny. And, but I just posted it on Twitter as just kind of a standalone thing and let it sit there. And then, so I don't know, a week or two later, maybe, I don't even remember, but, so I called in office hours, and I don't even remember what the idea was that I was going to call in, and usually I'll have some topic in mind or something. Uh, and as I started talking about this as an example, I could tell right away Tim was just like not interested. Whatever it was I was talking about, he was just like, he's like, yeah. So what else? So what else you got? Which, when he says something like that, it means like, I either want you to get off the phone because you're not interesting right now, or you better bring up something else to, because I'm, kind of done with this. So I kind of like I sat there for a second. I'm like, oh shit. So then I'll just start thinking, well, I did find the final script to the Game of Thrones and started throwing that stuff out. And of course, they died laughing at that.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave me a lot of confidence there to sort of start trying stuff like that and doing that with them. So
Yeah. And then another one, I'm trying to think of other, I know every time you go on, it's funny, but I'm trying to think of some other ones. But more recently, you did the one where like you found like the eggs in your basement and you were doing like the eggnog challenge.
that was right, the eggnog
What?
challenge. Yeah, with it. So that was so I can share with you there. Well, I'll just say the majority of the stuff I do, I don't tell them what I'm doing. Um, I just show up and I just kind of like seeing their reaction to whatever stupid stuff it is that I come up with and throw out at them. Every once in a while they'll throw something at me, and the eggnog challenge was something that they came up with or Tim came up with, and where he was like, hey, I want you to be on the show, what can we do? And he said, why don't we have like this eggnog challenge where you have to drink a lot of eggnog? So I'm like, okay, sure. And just so, but from there, but that's pretty much it. We don't really have any more discussion about it than that. So from there, it's kind of up to me to come up with, well, what am I going to do, or how am I going to, keep this sustained a little bit. So yeah, so I just kind of got the idea that Phil, well, number one, we were going to have a thing where Phil drinks too much eggnog, but then I kind of layered into it. Well, Phil doesn't have enough eggnog material, so it's like, where could he find some like just eggs, to mix in and start making the eggnog? And I don't know if you know this, but like the inspiration came. I was at the grocery store because at first I was thinking like, well, I guess I'll just get chicken eggs or something like that, but that's going to look kind of stupid because they're just, everybody's going to know chicken eggs. Well, they sell in the grocery stores little quail eggs, and that's those little tiny spotted eggs, and you can buy those in a little carton. So they look just like what you'd find in a bird's nest. So I was like, okay, I'll just go plant these in a bird's nest. I had a real bird's nest that was just sitting there underneath my deck. So I just took that and put some eggs in there, and away I went from there.
Yeah. And in terms of just, like you said, when you were at that one party with all those guys, in terms of like hanging out with those guys, I mean, I'm sure it's probably just like hanging out with normal people, right? Like
Yeah.
Fred Armisen and John C. Riley and all them. Like,
Well, yeah, it was super weird that when you're talking about the 9 to 5 episode where it was, Fred was there, John C. Riley was there, Kyle Mooney was there from Saturday Night Live, and a whole bunch of other people, Brendan Walsh and Johnny Pemberton and Sarah Squirm, who's now on Saturday Night Live. She was there.
yeah,
So that in and of itself was very weird. Um, but so hanging out with them was definitely not like when you say they're normal. Yeah, they are, but I'm trying to think. Uh, but I think that specific day, because that was COVID had, like, that would just, everything shut down that night. So like in LA, there were all the bars were closed, restaurants were closed that night. And I remember Fred was like, he was a little paranoid, and nobody was wearing masks. We know nobody thought to wear them, or any of that. But like he was always wanting to get new. What are the little things you put on a microphone? The little not a windsock, but
they call them like a lavalier or something. Or...
no, hang on a second. This thing here, this little thing here that goes on top of a microphone.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
always asking for new ones to put on the microphone because he didn't want to talk after somebody else had talked. He was a little. So I guess I don't know why I'm saying he wouldn't standoffish, but everybody was just kind of like, what's going on kind of a thing. So,
Yeah.
but there was so many people and so many personalities there. It was hard to have like a natural, um, at least for me anyway. It was just more of a surreal experience there. But at the Christmas show from 2 years ago, I did get a chance to talk to John C. A couple of things, and he told me the story because I did the Drummer Boy song with John Brancy, and John and Will Ferrell did the same thing, several years earlier on Funny or Die.
Like
And
the
if you're
David, was that like the David Bowie
David
and
Bowie and Bing Crosby.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's hilarious.
And so we were talking about it, and he was telling us the story, the real life story about how that came up with David Bowie and Bing Crosby, and how Bing was on death's door, and he had, I guess he had some form of cancer or something, but he was just like ashen, just like the producers knew this guy has not much longer to go. And they're like,
Oh,
and
man.
we're trying to produce this Christmas show with Bing Crosby, and they're like, how can we like jazz this up a little bit?
Yeah.
And so somebody involved in the show, I can't remember who it was. It was like a mutual agent or a mutual manager or something, and that worked with David Bowie as well as Bing, maybe something like that. So he's like, you know what? Because they were in London when they shot it, and he said, maybe I can get David to come over here and sing a song for us. He's like in the studio kind of across the street from where we are. And as a favor, I'll ask him. And so he agreed to do it. And I don't know if it was like an original song they wrote or something for it, but it was specifically to, like I said, just to kind of bring Bing back to life a little bit and have something interesting in the show. And Bing literally died like a very short time after that show
Oh
ended, so
man.
he was gone. But it was
Uh
just kind of a funny, sad story. But yeah, but but John was a good guy in that instance there, just hanging out in the backstage areas, and I'm sitting backstage waiting for my thing to go out, and John is behind me in a Santa Claus suit, kind of sitting in the stairwell, and just again another just very surreal experience there. But just things you
yeah.
never think would happen. But
Yeah, but John C. Riley's one of those guys who he's like really famous, but like not at the same time. Like he's been in a
right,
ton of good movies, but he's not like super huge or anything. But I mean, he's been in so many good movies though, right? I
yeah,
mean, he's almost at the level of like Will Ferrell, even with like
oh for sure,
Step Brothers and stuff. And
yeah.
but he's
But
not quite to the
he
same
definitely
level. I
has
don't think.
that everyman. He's definitely got that everyman quality to him,
Yeah,
for sure. But yeah, so he's kind of got that dual. He is an enormous star in all of his accomplishments and everything, but he just is, perceived uh, as sort of in that vein, I guess. I don't know.
just a normal guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you've actually only met the. I'm kind of getting confused on the dates, but like you've only
yeah.
met the whole crew like twice, two or three times.
Um. So yeah, I'm trying to think too. So that time in March, the Christmas show in LA in 2021, um, and then um, and then I saw Tim and Vic when they were on tour with the band this summer. So when they came to Atlanta, uh, Tim reached out for me to come out and do a little bit and interrupt the concert here in the show. So that was fun too. But yeah, so then I hung out with them after the show a little bit too.
Yeah. So I was kind of wondering like why doesn't Doug tour with them too? Because he could play music too, right?
I don't know. I don't know that I don't get that impression. Like I think he can play around with a keyboard maybe, but I don't think he's accomplished enough to do that. So that's probably reason number one.
Yeah.
And then reason number two would just be the costs of touring and I think like we were talking about, the margins there are usually pretty thin in the first place. So
Yeah.
in order to make money without losing money, um, you gotta cut out the fat. In that case,
Yeah.
it would be Doug Lussenhop, I guess. But
Well, I know like he opened for and I'm sure you know about this, but he opened
yeah,
for Jack Black
yeah,
band. What I'm forgetting the name of their band.
Tenacious D.
Yeah, exactly. He opened up for Tenacious D, and I listened to him on his podcast and also Office Hours. I think talking about how kind of wild the experience. It sounded almost like a pretty scary experience. I mean,
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine opening up for Tenacious D at like some of these huge venues and getting like booed or like
yeah,
people just don't know who you are. I mean, that takes balls. You know what I mean? To go do that.
yeah. And I kind of don't understand that because I mean, Doug is very, very funny. It's not like he's, I don't know if you've heard stories about when Neil Hamburger has opened for, I don't know if Neil opened for Tenacious D or he was opening for somebody else where he got booed. But it was something kind of wildly different where he was doing his stand up and then there was some
Yeah,
musical act or something and they were just like, we just want the music, get the hell off the stage.
I think it was
Uh,
Tenacious D.
Maybe it was, but
I think it was. Yeah,
I don't get that because they're both a, you would think anybody in that comedy world would appreciate whoever it is, if it's Doug or somebody else there, that what's going, and Doug's got a musical component to his act too. He's always got his turntables and stuff like that. So I would think people would be crazy for that, but you never know. But I went to Tenacious D a few years ago, and they had an opener that I absolutely hated. But it was a musical act. I don't even remember who they were, but it was miserable. So you never know, I guess. But I don't get that one. Why anybody would not want to uh, hear the stylings of DJ Doug Pound?
yeah. Well, I have a feeling that like a lot of these people who go see Tenacious D are probably just like big into like Jack Black movies or something.
Probably they just
So
want
they
to see
don't
Jack,
really,
and
yeah, they don't really know what they're like. They're not like full on. Maybe they are Tenacious D heads, but it's like they probably don't really fully get the humor, especially of like Greg Turkington or DJ
yeah,
Doug Pound. They're
yeah.
probably just like normal, like suburban people who are like, what the hell is this? You know?
I think you're right. I think they're more uh was it not Jungle Cruise? What what the big movies that Jack Black is in? Jungle
I think it
Book.
is Jungle Cruise, isn't it? With like the
What is
Rock?
it? No, what's
Was
Jumanji? Jumanji's the one I'm trying. I
Jumanji?
knew it started with a JU, but I could not get to that one. But yeah, they're
He's in it
probably
with the
big.
Rock too, right? I mean, it's
Yes,
he's
they're
another
probably
one of
big.
those guys. He's another one of those guys who it's kind of crazy, like how big Jack Black is for being kind of like Jack Black. You know,
Right.
it's like I mean, don't get he's a
Yeah,
funny guy, but I wouldn't think that he would be in these like massive movies like he is. You know?
yeah. But I think you kind of hit on it though. Is it's probably fans of his movies and stuff that come there and they just want to see him and they don't want to listen to anybody else.
Yeah. So yeah, going back to you. So I know you did like a little while ago. I heard like I don't know if you were joking or not, but you did something on Twitter where you like burned yourself or something,
Oh, my feet or my
right?
shoes?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that kind of just like a troll on trying to get like viral or something, or like?
I was not trying to, but it was just everything I do is kind of spur of the moment, where I just think about it and then I'm just like just put it out there. But yeah, so that was at the time when everybody was protesting about Nike shoes, and the big one that was going around was people taking their socks and ripping the top part of the sock off, so the Nike logo got ripped off of their socks. Which, and then the other side of that, as it got worse, people would toss their Nikes into a fire pit and burn them up, which I thought was just the stupidest thing in the world. So I thought, well, I'm going to take that. I'm going to raise the game there, and I'll burn my Nikes with them on my feet. And of course, that wasn't real. I didn't actually burn my feet, but did a little creative photoshopping there. But I made it so good that everybody sort of consumed it and believed it was real. And it was nighttime, and then when I woke up next morning, I had all these DMs from almost every news service you could imagine, wanting to interview me and asking me,
Oh man.
how are my feet and all this other stuff. And so I kind of wish, in hindsight, I wish I had just let it go and just kept stringing them along. But it freaked me out because there were so. I mean, it was like it was AP News, it was Reuters, it was all the big news services were wanting to talk to me.
In a way, that's kind of like a good sign, right? I mean, if you're getting that much attention.
It totally is, but it was so much. It freaked me out, and then I started kind of thinking about real world stuff, and I'm like, I got to go to work and I got to do all this other stuff, and I don't like. It's one thing for me to have my little corner of the universe on office hours and people know me here, but it doesn't really interfere with real world stuff necessarily, or it hasn't yet. But that was definitely going to. So I cut it off, and I think the first couple I was like, no, it's not real. I faked this and all this other stuff, and so they kind of left me alone. But it's still, I mean, it's still out there. If you just if you Google it, you'll see it all over the place. Man burns his feet, or on Snopes or whatever it is. But it's kind of funny.
What do you think like their angle was for it? Like, I mean, like the Nike angle. I mean, like, why would they? Why would they be
the news?
Yeah, like why do they want to show a story on some guy like burning his feet? You know what I mean?
They thought I had literally burned my shoes on my feet, so they thought that was real, and they wanted to talk to the person whose way of whose process decided to get to where he was going to light his shoes, but forgot to take them off his feet, I guess.
Yeah. When I don't remember where I even heard that story, but when I heard it, I was like, oh man, like this guy like might really be kind of crazy. You know, he's burning his feet.
Right.
But it's funny, like with virality and stuff like that, because it seems like you kind of have to like you have to push the limit to the point where like you don't actually get hurt. Like it's,
right.
I feel like everybody's trying to get viral, and it's like it seems like we just have to push the limit more and more. And it's like if you can find a way to like fucking like burn yourself or something, it's like
right.
Like just set yourself on fire, but have like some sort of
right.
And
there were and there was some definitely some social commentary to that post too, not just the joke, but how stupid, and that's kind of who Phil's persona is. How stupid are you willing to be to become a quote unquote internet celebrity? And those are the things that I also find very funny in the reach, how far people are willing to reach to do that. And I try to find how stupid I can be to be someone to do that. So like drinking mouthwash. I don't know if you've seen any of the mouthwash videos and stuff that I did a long time ago.
I've seen a little bit of it. Yeah, that too. That comes across pretty crazy too. Yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't really do, but I just spur of the moment just said, what, I'll drink this mouthwash if I get 100 retweets, which is such a arbitrarily low number that but to Phil, that's pretty big. So another example of just somebody being stupid for virility.
Yeah,
virality.
And it's like when it comes to kind of going viral or something, a lot of times the stuff that's really funny like isn't like, and I don't want to say it's not intentionally funny, because it is intentionally funny, but it's almost like you're laughing at the person kind of thing. Right. And like there's this guy, I don't know if you know the H3 podcast. Do you listen to the H3 podcast? Yeah. There's a guy who went on there. He calls himself like the Jersey Outlaw. I don't know if you may have even heard of him, but he went on there with, Stavros Halkias from like Come Town. He's like a comedian,
okay,
like a chubby comedian. He was on there, and this guy, the Jersey Outlaw, who's like an older guy, an older like Dennis, he's trying to like become a comedian, but he's not he's not funny in the general sense, and they were kind of making fun of him for that. But like since then, I've seen him like blow up on Instagram. He'll just go up to like random people on the street and start saying like stupid shit to them, and like kind of like stuff that it is funny, but it's not funny. It's like he's just like
Right.
trying to make fun of them. But I
Yeah.
mean, it just seems like if you have enough like balls and enough like charisma, like you can just go out there and like do crazy shit, and like
Right.
it'll get people's attention. But like you said, you also have to think about like your, you know, your real life, like your work life, and
Right.
you don't want people to think you're like some nutbag or something. But
And my wife always gets mad if I do stuff like that, and she's like, "Well, you're gonna influence some kid to do this," and I'm like, "Well," I said, "somebody has to be really stupid to mimic what I'm doing, so hopefully they're not that dumb." But she does make a point too that I got to have some responsibility or disclaimers attached to it as well
yeah,
every once in a
do
while.
do not try this at home type of thing or
Right,
something.
right.
Yeah, but so yeah, as far as the Rush thing, I haven't watched too much of it.
Well,
But
don't
it's like
worry because there's a good it's a good 20, 24, 30 something hours worth of Gettython you can catch up on. So
I have a lot to watch. Is it in
yeah.
podcast format too, or is it just on YouTube?
No, God forbid if that was on podcast format where you're just listening to this for 6 or 7 hours, it would just be you'd put a gun to your head and kill yourself. But so no, this is something we just strictly did on YouTube, and the goal there was the basis of that was this friend of mine, so my co-host Russell Joyce. Um, he's a real Rush fan, so he loves Rush. Uh, in real life, I don't know anything about, well, and on the show too, I don't know anything about Rush, or not very much. Of course, I know Getty is and all the players, but I don't really listen to their music except when it comes on the radio or something like that. But not a big fan. But and this kind of dovetails into what we're talking about going viral and stuff. So Russ posted this picture, and it was just all it was just a standalone picture of Geddy Lee with a bass guitar, and he's picking on his bass, and Russ posts, wouldn't it be cool if this picture of Geddy Lee got retweeted 2,112 times, which I didn't even know what the significance of 2,112 was, but apparently that's the name of one of their albums is 2112. And so it was, one of those just absurdly kind of funny, and people kind of latched onto it, and it did like it, went viral really quick. John Mayer retweeted it, so it was like, in the thousands, like within an hour or something like that. And so the next year, so he did a thing. So he did a thing where he got to 2,112 and he printed it out on his printer and he framed it and he mailed it to Geddy Lee's manager and sent some note in there or something, and he got zero response from anybody. Nobody said anything back to him, or Getty never said thank you, or not that he really expected it, but just the act of somebody printing this out and then mailing a framed photo to Getty as if this was some honor to him was so funny to me. And so the next year he took a picture. Then he took a picture of the framed tweet of the picture. And it's like, wouldn't it be cool if this retweeted picture of Geddy Lee that got retweeted 2,112 times get retweeted 2,112 times, something like that. I can't remember how he worded it. And it got to like 1,000 or something, and it stalled out, and people sort of kind of quit paying attention to it. And so I said, well, wouldn't it be funny if we had like one of these old Jerry Lewis telethons where we had this like marathon show where we're like raising, quote unquote, raising awareness for retweets to get people to retweet this picture of Geddy Lee 2,112 times, and we'll have guests, and we'll be we'll we'll just have these stupid clips and videos of how to retweet stuff uh, and ask for people's pledges to retweet and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it all started, and we've been doing it for I guess we're on our fifth one or something. I can't remember what number. I don't even remember what number we're on. Um, but every year it becomes he frames each one. He frames it so now the picture is like almost like a pin dot. You can't even see Getty in it. It's so small because it's been framed and reframed and pictured on picture like 4 or 5 times. So we keep making it smaller and smaller, but it's funny. It's funny to me anyway, but it's a yeah, it's a marathon, a literal marathon to go through them all and watch them.
So like, is it serious for your friend, or is he kind of trolling when he does it too? Like,
Uh, and I wouldn't call it trolling, but no, I mean, he is serious about his love of the band, but he gets the humor completely. So, we're both kind of, and it's very, I'll say it's very on cinema inspired. Not that like
yeah,
in their, Tim and Greg are sort of, deep down they kind of hate each other, but they kind of rely on each other. But they kind of have that dynamic where Tim does stuff that makes Greg mad, but we're not like that where we both get along on the show. But it's kind of inspired by them in the sense that I've got one guy who's very serious about Rush and likes him, and then me who's really just in it for the fame and just wants the retweets and doesn't really know anything about the music at all. But
yeah,
so we have that component going.
yeah. It's kind of like, what would you? I think it's maybe called like meta humor, almost like is it like
Sure.
anti? Is that what it anti comedy or whatever? Like,
Yeah, I guess I've heard the term, but yeah, I mean, it's uh, humor is humor, I guess. But there's sometimes it's just more subtle than others, and sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But it's definitely more on the subtle level, and the swings on the absurd
yeah,
scale too, for sure.
and that's probably like my. It's probably like my favorite type of humor. The thing is that I can't really think of like many podcasts or TV shows or movies who really. I don't even know if there's any movies or TV shows that like really do that well, right? I mean, in terms of
No,
podcasts, there's office hours, but I can't think of many more podcasts that really do that, right? I mean, it's
no, not like that. I don't think.
no,
Um,
it's almost like kind of like borderline like chaos or something, right? Like where it's just
right,
like you just don't know what's going on.
right.
And I mean, I love that, but I'm trying to think of a movie or TV show that does it. And I don't think I can. There was, yeah, I don't think I can. There was
Yeah.
that for some reason that there was just one. I'm probably gonna forget the name of this movie, but it was like set in New York. It was like black and white. Like I remember who the director is. It's like two girls in New York, and it was I wouldn't even. It's not nearly the same thing as what you do, but I remember like not really like it was supposed to be like a comedy, but I just didn't get the humor like at all. It was very
Yeah.
odd.
Yeah.
I'd have to remember the name, but yeah, I'm forgetting
Uh,
the name of it. But do you
right.
know what I'm
But
talking about?
I don't, but
It's the
um,
guy who did like Marriage Story, the director who did Marriage Story. I don't know if you know about movies, but yeah,
yeah, I'll
I'm
look it
forgetting
up.
a lot of names right now. But and I look it
Yeah.
up. But I feel like when I look stuff up, like it just takes like me a minute of just like typing. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
forget it. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But it's and that's the other thing that appeals to me with a lot of the stuff that Tim does is with On Cinema, you got the Oscar special or his office hours is the live component to it where it is chaos. I mean, and that's what I like doing Gettython is I can kind of take, yeah, again, it's just completely inspired by them, but let's do this live where we don't know where this is going. It's not really scripted. I mean, we do talk about it. We do kind of have, little bullet points of things we want to get to, but we don't know where the road's going to go, and a lot of the things that when you're watching them do, you don't really know where it's going, but it always ends up in a great place. So that's one of the things I love about those guys.
Yeah, it starts to get kind of like squirrely. So it doesn't really get to this point on office hours. I think the older office hours got pretty weird. Like there was times
Oh
when like
yeah,
the audio wasn't working, and like I guess you would have people call in who were like maybe
right.
racist or something. But
Yeah.
um, like to me, that's what makes it kind of fun is when you get like now it seems pretty. It almost seems pretty tamed down now, like especially with the callers they get in and stuff.
It's a lot more professional in the way they've produced it, but the callers themselves have changed, and I don't know. I've been trying to figure out why that is. If it's because everybody's on camera now versus in the old days you're just on your phone, um, and if it's just that I mean, I shouldn't say like deer in the headlights kind of a thing where, they come up on the screen and then suddenly people are like, oh, I don't have anything to say. But there's a lot more of that now, and I don't know why that is exactly. But it's the only part of the show where I wish that could change, but I don't know what the exact or the best way to change that would be
Well,
exactly.
I was almost wondering if like Matt was like kind of like checking the calls beforehand to make sure they weren't like too weird or something.
He's trying that. So before it was really just sort of a random chance, and it's always been random chance where you just they pick up and whoever was on was on. And now though he's trying to kind of screen people a little bit through the Zoom chat, where it's like all right, if you're going to raise your hand to be on the show, tell me what it is you want to talk about. So basically they're trying to weed out any duds or if they can, but that's always not foolproof either. So you never know,
Yeah.
but
And
that's
how
yeah.
is your Rush?
Yeah.
How is the Rush podcast doing in terms of numbers and stuff?
We didn't make it this year. We did not hit our goal, which was so disappointing. And so I don't know what the future holds for Gettython. My idea was we just like the joke for the next one would be we just need to rebrand. We need to have a rebranding of Getty Lee and just like we're introducing a new product or something, to kind of fool people into to retweeting something different, even though it's the same. Or I don't know how we're gonna do it. But so we'll see. So it's people like it and they kind of look forward to it when it rolls around, whenever it is we roll around and get to doing it. But that's the other thing is scheduling is kind of tough. But so I don't know what the future holds. It'll be there. I think we'll do it again, but I don't know in what context because getting people to press the retweet button is surprisingly hard to do, and and they just are
Yeah.
resistant. It's like, nope, I'm not going to do it, and they
The
didn't do it
internet
this year.
the internet is like a hard thing to tame, it's like it's
Right.
it's hard to
People
get people to do anything on there.
people think they're gonna hurt their own brand. Like I say, if I retweet this Getty Lee picture, I'm just going to be outcast, from my own imaginary fame or whatever it is they think they've got going on with their themselves or something. But it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I also just find I think that, Tim and you and all those guys find like that like old school rock and roll stuff pretty funny too, just like naturally, like kind of like Spinal Tap type
Hmm.
stuff. Just you know what I mean? Like I'm assuming that's kind of like what you're doing, like when you're like kind of goofing on Rush or whatever, or when office hours kind of he'll like goof on like the Beatles a lot and the Stones and all that.
Yeah,
And
a little bit. Although I mean, there's a line though. I mean, I don't want to cross a line where I'm like mocking them.
yeah.
And people have asked that too. Are you where they're like, "Are you goofing on them?" Or you? And I'm like, "No." I said, "I'm really trying to goof on myself." And Russ is the same way, where it's really more about the absurdity of us placing the importance of retweeting this tweet versus anything to do with Getty. Although, but Getty, I mean, but it is, you do have to admit too, Rush is just they're kind of as a band it's either like a love hate. People either hate Rush or they love Rush, and Getty kind of falls in a place of rock history where some people find him really annoying. They don't they don't like his high pitched voice and or just whatever it is. So he's got that a little bit of polarizing feel to it. So it gives you a lot of space where you can kind of poke fun at different things and but just for somebody being a super fan of Geddy Lee is not like the same as being like like it's Michael Jackson or something like some super famous pop singer or something like that. But
Or like the Beatles, or
the
yeah,
Beatles or just somebody just at a different level.
you too.
So it's kind of funny to talk about them with that kind of reverence, I guess. That's also a little bit funny to me, but so yeah,
So yeah, what kind of music are you actually? You said you're like not really that into Rush, right? In real life,
yeah.
but like, what kind of music are you into?
I mean, I love trash music though. Don't get me wrong. I'm a grew up in the '80s, so I love almost anything '80s. Van Halen, Prince is probably my all-time favorite artist, I would say. But I actually, a lot of people hate Billy Joel. I like Billy Joel, for example. Hate to admit that one, but just different stuff. But I'm more. I am definitely not. There's definitely more musically educated people that would throw out bands and stuff, and I'll just be like, I've never heard of that person. Just play me some Def Leppard or something, and I'm happy. So that's kind of my
Yeah.
thing.
And then in terms of like comedians and podcasts, you kind of already mentioned some obvious ones, but
Right.
what kind of stuff are you into as far as that?
Um, Gosh, that's a hard question to answer. I mean, I love the best show. And it's hard for me to get out and listen to stuff though, just from a time consumption point. But and then just comedy wise, I mean the stuff Tim Robinson did on Netflix is unbelievably funny. When Key and Peele
That
had
would be an example of a show that we're talking about. Yeah, that I forgot about. Yeah.
right, I love Key and Peele. I love their stuff. And just trying to think of some other folks that I kind of gravitate toward, but I mean that's pretty broad there. So comedy wise, it goes pretty much a long way there. So
Yeah. And one other movie that I thought of that might be kind of like that, I don't even like wacky kind of chaotic humor is. I'm also forgetting the name of this movie, but you should probably know this one. Like that old English movie. There's like a bunch of English
oh,
movies.
the Monty Python, sure,
Exactly.
right.
That might be in this kind of vein, right? Just kind of like off kilter.
Monty Python. I mean, I love their movies. I like their sketch stuff, but I didn't always jive with their sketch stuff too. I mean, they English humor is definitely a different brand than what we're used to, but we're supposed to love them. But I didn't always get all their sketch stuff, I have to admit. But their movies, I loved them. The Life of Brian and um, Holy Grail and all that stuff are hilarious. But for sure, um, yeah.
Yeah. And then have you heard of like my favorite podcast, comedy podcast would be like, have you heard like Yeah But Still by any chance?
No.
I always ask people and it's like nobody's ever heard of it. Like I know Tim Heidecker knows one of the, do you know who Brandon Wardell is? The
I've
comedian Brandon Wardell.
I know the name, but I can't picture him.
Yeah. It's all part of this like alt comedy group, I think. And like Sarah
Mhm.
Squirm has been on there. Like, I don't know if you know who Connor O'Malley is. Like
Yes,
he's been on there. Yeah. Like if you would probably really like Connor O'Malley's.
I do like him. Yes, so
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Super wacky and crazy.
Yeah, crazy
Yeah.
person. Let's
Yeah.
see. He married. Is he married to A.D. Bryant?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, yeah,
Which I find like an interesting marriage because he's like really wacky and she seems to be somewhat
yeah. How
normal. But then again,
how
it
she
might
can put
just
up
be,
with him?
yeah, that might just be his like his shtick. Maybe he's like normal in real life, but I
I'm
don't
sure
know.
it is, but I know You talk to my wife for 5 minutes, and she would just be rolling her eyes at the stupid stuff that I do too. So,
Yeah. I was
God
actually
bless the
wondering,
wives.
I was wondering about that. Like when you call in and stuff, some of the stuff I've heard you do, I'm like surprised that, your wife handles it well. Like, does she know that you're calling in? Like, or do you kind of
Yeah, oh
hide it?
yeah, yeah, but she doesn't ever watch it. She just uh, she has very little interest in some of that stuff. And if I do put it upon her, like, oh, hey, why don't you check out this stuff? She just kind of like she gives me kind of a patronizing chuckle, but generally speaking, she just is like rolling her eyes at me. So
Same with my girlfriend. If I try to
yeah,
get her to listen to any of the podcasts I listen to, she's just like, no way, I don't want to listen to this. It's too weird.
right.
But yeah, so in terms of like politics and stuff, and then also like I kind of mentioned like the whole Joe Rogan, like Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder. I just listened to a recent. I don't know. Do you know who Eric Weinstein is or Brett Weinstein?
No, is this I know the Krassensteins, but no.
No, it's kind of like a hard thing to talk
Or the
about if you don't really.
Klippensteins. Who are these? Who are those two? There's brothers, the brothers
I
that
want
are
to say,
they're always getting banned off of the internet.
is it
There's
Scott Klippenstein
well, there's
or
two different. They have the same name. They have this like the Krassenstein and Klippenstein or something. I don't remember, but anyway, that just reminded me of that.
I don't know if I remember that. I assumed that you
Don't
would
think
know
about them
of.
anymore. Just yeah, move on.
It's fine. I assumed you would know the Weinstein brothers because of these like they're Brett Weinstein has come out as like extremely just like anti-vax, like doesn't believe in,
Uh,
he thinks COVID was like a lab experiment, and like
yeah.
they go on Joe Rogan like all the time. And this last one I
Okay.
listened to with you'll it's one of those things you'll just have to check out or not. But like Eric
Yeah.
Weinstein went on, and
Is he a talking head kind of guy, or is he what is
he's
his?
technically like a mathematician, like physicist type guy.
Okay.
And he
Okay.
is a really smart guy. And like I know he does like he's high up, who like Peter Thiel is, like he's high up in like the Peter Thiel
Yeah.
company. Yeah. So he
Okay.
is a smart guy, but they'll both go on. And a lot of, as you probably know, a lot of these people will go on the Joe Rogan podcast. And he went on for like 4 hours, mostly him talking. And I didn't like really understand like any of it. I mean, it was like very just weird. And like he'll like say how we're having all these problems and stuff, and he doesn't really have any like answers for it. It's kind of just like
Hmm.
his literal answer is like, we need to get off this planet. Like, and it's like,
Hmm.
dude, like we're not going to be getting off this planet anytime soon. And
Right.
but just a lot of like bashing the government and bashing this or that, but like not really having any answers, as Joe Rogan tends to do. So I'm just kind of like wondering what you think of all that. Uh,
About going to Mars and stuff like
well,
that.
no, more like the politics, like where you stand with the politics, like
Oh,
what your viewpoint is on that.
this is the part of the show where I get canceled
Yeah, if you don't
here.
want to go into it, you don't have to, but I'm
No,
sure you're probably level-headed about it, right? I
I
mean,
try to be. Yeah. So what's a specific question? I mean, you want to know if I've been vaccinated?
well, no, not vaccinated, but I mean, what's your stance on all this? It just seems like there's so much misinformation and everybody's just at each
Yeah.
other's throats. And it's like
Yeah.
I'm arguing with my own family about like a lot of it's the
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID
Yeah.
stuff. It's just like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Like,
My opinion on a lot of things is there's probably usually truth in both sides of the story. Um, Not just specifically this, but I guess almost with anything really. But so, like, if you want to believe that Wuhan COVID came out of Wuhan laboratory, I'd say yeah, that's probably true. I mean, I don't know where it came from, but I'd say that's a good guess. Um, if you want to say that vaccines are not super effective, I'd say that's potentially true. I think they do help. They do help prevent uh, acquiring the vaccine, acquiring the virus. But they were promising us, I think, in the beginning, like this stuff will protect you for 8 to 12 months. Now they're saying no, it's really more like 4 months or 3 months or whatever it is, and it goes away. And I mean, so who knows with all that stuff? I mean, but I'm not. I am generally of the greater good is how we should act in terms of socially or whatever, whether you think you need a vaccine or not, if it helps others. And, I certainly don't think the government is trying to create some sort of microchip to plant in us and follow us around or do anything like that, or there's some nefarious uh, active ingredient in the vaccine that's going to make us grow a third year or something within the next year or any of that stuff. So it's I'm sort of like Occam's razor or whatever is the more likely true is probably true, and that's probably where I stand on a lot of that kind of stuff. And then politically, it's just my thing is just don't put any nut jobs in office. And I pretty much kind of ignore a lot of it anyway. But when you get somebody like Trump involved, then you can't help but deal with somebody like that. So, but it's hard to attract quality candidates anymore. It seems like there's just nobody who would be worth a damn willing to even try, because it's just such a circus nowadays that it attracts the worst people and the worst candidates, in my opinion.
Yeah, we probably need to make it like more, we got to make it so people actually like want to be president at this point. But I don't think nobody really wants to be president at this point. It's people would rather be like a YouTuber or like an internet star.
It seems like that's where we're headed, where a YouTuber is going to be president someday, and probably in the very near. It could be me, maybe in the near future. I don't know.
Casey Neistat or something will be president. I don't know if you know who he is. Do you know Casey Neistat?
I was kind of like hoping. Do.
What? Yeah.
My kids might know. I don't know.
Or Logan Paul will be the
president.
There you go.
Yeah,
someone like him.
The Paul Andrew, brothers. I think the Paul brothers, in conjunction with each other, will be co-presidents.
It'll be like a duo.
That might be a good pick.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea to have like a duo as president, like two people as president.
Yeah, and then they can disagree. If somebody does something stupid, the other guy can fight it out or something, and argue with each other over whose idea is the best.
Yeah. Or maybe Andrew Tate will get out of prison and
that guy needs to be thrown in the ocean.
Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming he's going away for a long time, but I don't really know too much. It's hard to keep track of anything these days on like the news, because there's so many stories, and it's like every day or every week something's changing. So it's hard to like know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
But what I don't know if you know anything about like the tech stuff with like the Chat GPT or anything like that.
I've tried it a couple of times. It's hard to get on that site, actually. I guess because everybody and their brothers now trying to do it. But it's scary. Some of the stuff, and even people that will post to me, and it's me. And they've got me saying something, and it's the voice is really pretty close to how I sound. The technology is just unbelievable, and it's really pretty scary.
Yeah.
Where you're talking about just political things and whatever. It's going to be hard to believe anything anymore, I would say, within the next, say, 5 years. It's going to be hard to know if is anything the truth that's coming out there, or is it manufactured, or is it artificially created.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's even getting to a point where like I post pictures and videos up on Instagram, and people are like literally just starting to post like AI art on there,
right?
And it's like they're not even like really getting in trouble for that. They're like gaining followers because the art's so good. And I'm like, I actually just recently posted an AI art, or like two of them. I mean, it's getting to the point where like how long before that stuff literally is just, gonna it's already replacing jobs, like
Right.
copywriters and stuff like that. But yeah, so I think that I covered most everything. Um, unless there's anything that I'm like not that I didn't get to that you want to go over.
No, I think we covered it all.
Okay, cool. So lastly, what I'll usually ask is like yeah, anything you want to plug. And then also like as far as or like, anything you want to plug. I don't really want to make this about like Tim Heidecker or Vic Berger,
Yeah.
Doug Lucenhop, but as far as like the Vic Berger stuff goes, I've heard that like a lot of his stuff is really funny, but I just don't really know where to look. And I heard a lot of it got like erased or something. So anything that you want to
Yeah.
plug in terms of yourself, or maybe Vic Berger stuff, or Doug stuff, or
Yeah.
even Tim Heidecker stuff
I
that
won't.
maybe I don't know about.
No. No, probably not. Yeah, I can plug one stupid show that I'm doing with Nick Lutzko end of the month, but that's pretty much all I got on the table.
What is that you're doing? I know the name Nick Let's Go, but I can't think of who he is.
Nick does a lot of the sort of uh, music parodies where he's he'll sing about Halloween. He did a lot of the Spirit Halloween
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then Dan Bongino, you'll make fun of him or just stuff like that. So Gremlin
He was
stuff.
he was on Office Hours somewhere recently,
He has been. I don't know if it's recently or not, but
probably like a
uh,
year ago now, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, maybe something like that. But talented, funny guy. But we're doing something just really, really stupid. Just sort of based off of just sort of phony fights that we do on Twitter with each other, um, where he, I don't even know how it came up, but we're talking about Muppets or something, and we started getting into a debate over who knows the most about Muppets, and and I would tell him like, well, you don't know anything about it. I know everything about Muppets, and he's like, you couldn't name a single Muppet, and I said, I can name 100 Muppets, and so we're gonna do a show where it's called the 100 Muppet Challenge, where we're challenging each other to name who can name 100 Muppets, and doing that live on YouTube. That's
Okay,
it.
so okay,
That's it.
so where can we find that on YouTube? But like, wonder what
Yeah,
channel or whatever.
that's to be determined. It could be on Nick Lutzko's channel. It could be on mine. So that's that. Just stay tuned. TBD, to be determined. But it'll be March 19th at
Okay,
I think at 8 p.m. Eastern time.
okay. What about anybody else's stuff that you want to? I always ask if you want to. Like,
Yeah.
is there any Vic Berger stuff that like is there any Vic stuff that I can find that's older that I or no? Do you not? Do you? I don't know if when you said
Uh,
no, you were talking about yourself or them too.
oh, I'm just saying they don't need me to plug them. They're doing
Oh, okay, okay,
just
okay. Yeah, yeah,
fine.
yeah. Well, let's just put it this way. I usually ask at the end. I don't want to say that use the word plug, but anything that you're
Yeah.
into right now that you want to like throw out there, like movies, TV shows, music, um,
Mm,
podcasts, anything.
God. Um, is there anything that jumps out at me? I can't really even think of anything. Um,
Yeah.
it
I
seems
know you
like
already
it,
mentioned some stuff, but
well, I mean, not really, but I kind of like I'm so focused on maybe too focused on either doing office hours stuff or lately the On Cinema Oscar special. I've been doing some stuff for them uh, that nobody would know that I'm involved in it other than I'm just writing some stuff for them. But that's pretty much it.
yeah, like it doesn't have to be your own stuff. If there's anything out there that
Yeah,
isn't your stuff.
yeah. Well, yeah, I can plug. I can because I was working on some a program for them, so I can plug that too. Where they're doing a 10-year anniversary. They're doing a program, a really nice program that covers sort of the 10 years of Oscar specials for On Cinema, and I've done some writing for them on that. It's going to be pretty cool. They've got a big a lot of cool artwork in there. I think they bundled it with some tickets to their show that's coming up March 12th. But I think On Cinema fans will love it. So I would say that's probably something they ought to look into.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. Well, thanks for coming on. Honestly, it was very nice of you to come on. I've been trying to. I actually asked Doug a while ago, and I think it was mainly just Doug. If I did ask Vic or Tim, they didn't respond, but that makes
Are
sense.
you the one
But
that Are you the one that Doug said he was too busy to come on?
well, he did say that to me, but I wasn't the guy. If you're talking about the guy who like called in to say that,
Yeah,
that wasn't me. I asked him a while ago. I like just sent out a ton of messages like on Instagram to bands and different people, and
yeah,
he was like, "Oh, like what is it?" And I told him what it was, and he's like, "Oh, I'm too busy right now with
yeah,
podcasts." And I was like,
yeah.
That's fine, I get it, but it is hard to get anybody of any caliber on.
Right.
So
You hit the right caliber when you ask me. So you hit the lowest. You got to hit the low rungs to get them, to say yes. So
yeah, well, I mean, you do have 12,000 Twitter
I
followers, so
know
that's
it's
not
massive.
bad.
Right. It's
Yeah.
massive for sure.
I mean, do you think there's any possibility that I could get someone like Tim on, or would he just
Zero.
not even see it? Would he just
Tim
wouldn't even see it?
Tim would not respond. I'd say I'll give that a zero chance. Tim is reluctant to even. I got him on Gettython once. Um, like Tim won't even retweet the Getty Lee tweet. So getting him on your
Why
show,
is that? Is it just
you're good point. I don't know. I don't know.
like pride or something? Like, he just doesn't.
Maybe
He
I
just
don't know.
won't do it.
He won't do it. So getting him on your show, I would put at a 0% chance. Um,
That's good to hear.
yeah. The
I
other
know
two
he
guys, I don't know.
Doug, maybe Vic, maybe Vic seems like nice. Where if you like make him feel bad, he'll do it.
I don't think Vic really even. I don't think he really likes talking about himself, and in that, I think that makes him uncomfortable. Actually, just
Yeah,
my feeling. But so if
yeah,
he turned you down, it wouldn't be because he's just like big time in you. I think it's just because he just like makes him uncomfortable, kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah. I know Tim went on. Do you know who like the needle drop guy is? I'm forgetting his actual name, but his YouTube, he like reviews music. He had Tim on a little while ago, but
Uh,
he's a big name. Like he's got like a ton of
if
a
you
ton of
if you pretend you're a music podcaster and you mention Bob Dylan or the Beatles, and then maybe you might pique his interest or something. I don't know, but you'll have
yeah.
to like have a big cover story to trick him into it.
Well, I'm kind of wondering if he even like looks if he even looks at his messages. Like he probably because he doesn't, right?
I don't know. I'd say 50-50. He may see him and
Yeah,
doesn't respond or doesn't look. I don't know.
yeah.
Because there's stuff
Well,
even amongst us. I mean, even Doug and Vic will say stuff like they've texted him and he doesn't respond to something they've texted to him. So that's not uncommon, I think.
yeah. I mean, yeah, he's got a family now, and
Oh yeah,
yeah, so he's a busy man.
busy
But
man.
yeah. Anyways, it was nice having you on, and
Sure.
I don't know, maybe I'll work up the courage to call into office hours one day. One thing I've noticed is like a lot of the people who call in, like they kind of give them shit, and I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to call in and like be made fun of. You know what I mean?
They might, and you got to be willing to take it if it happens. And it's
Yeah,
happened to me too. But the key is just have a topic in mind before you go in, and uh, like I said, Tim's kind of easy to hook into if you hit on like his key points. Like if there's some Beatles news that day, boy, I would go in there with and say, "Hey Tim, did you see this latest thing on Ringo Starr?" And you'll get him going. You'll have him on the hook, right away. So
yeah,
think of stuff that he likes, or if there's some big story of the day or something that strikes you funny or whatever, then that's what I would go in with.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on, and let me know if you ever want to come back on. And it was good talking to you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Micah.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.